My name is Alicia, and I'll be starting off our presentation. Our group is going to talk about groupthink and how it affects social groups, like friend groups, school groups, sports teams, workplace groups, basically any situation where people make decisions together. We chose this topic. We chose this topic because groupthink is something that happens more often than people realize, and it can influence decisions in both small and big situations. Groupthink happens when a group cares more about keeping peace and avoiding conflict than making the best decision. Instead of thinking critically, members just go along with whatever the group says. People stay quiet even if they disagree because they don't want to be the one who causes tension or goes against the group. The idea of groupthink comes from a psychologist named Irving uh, Janus, who introduced this concept in the early 1970s. He studied major political and military decisions and found that some huge mistakes happened because nobody wanted to challenge the group. Since then, the concept has been used to explain why groups, even normal everyday social groups, sometimes make choices that don't really make sense. For our presentation, we're focusing specifically on social groups. These are groups we interact with all the time: friends, classmates, coworkers, and teams. These groups can be positive and supportive, but they can also fall into groupthink really easily, especially if the group has a strong leader, a desire to fit in, or a fear of causing conflict. In these situations, people stop expressing their real opinions, and the group ends up making decisions without fully thinking them through. This topic matters because groupthink affects real life. It can lead people to do things they normally wouldn't do alone. Sometimes it results in harmless decisions like choosing a restaurant that nobody actually likes. But in other situations, it can lead to dangerous or unfair outcomes because no one feels comfortable speaking up. Understanding how groupthink Understanding how groupthink works helps us recognize when we're falling into it and how to avoid just going with the flow without thinking. And the rest of this presentation, each group member is going to break down some of the 8 major symptoms of groupthink that Irving Janus identified. They will explain what each symptom means and show examples of how they show up in everyday social group situations. Some of the symptoms they'll cover include the illusion of invulnerability, excessive stereotyping, self-censorship. Each person each person will give both a definition and a real life scenario so you can see how these symptoms actually play out in a group setting. Once all 8 symptoms are covered, the presentation will move into why groupthink happens, how people fall into it, and strategies that groups can use to avoid it. By the end, you'll understand not just what groupthink is, but also how it forms, how it affects group behavior, and how recognizing its symptoms can lead to healthier group communication and better decision making.
Hi, so my name is Kari Johnson, and as previously stated, groupthink is a situation in which group members seek unanimous agreement despite their individual doubts. And it was created by psychologist Irving Janis. And on the right, you can see an image from the 8 symptoms of groupthink by the Systems Thinking Alliance, and it shows all 8 symptoms that are signs that a group has gone off track. According to the textbook, Communication Matters by Corey Floyd, group members are nearly 200% more likely to voice disagreement if groupthink is not occurring than if it is. And with these examples that you will hear in the next part of this presentation is that most of the time no one voices disagreement, and the statistics shows why. So the first symptom we will be talking about is illusion of invulnerability. The definition of this is group members are overly confident in their position, ignoring obvious problems. An example of illusion of invulnerability would be if you and your friends are planning to drive and go out to eat, but the forecast shows that the weather will be getting bad and there might be possible icy roads. You guys have all driven in bad weather before, and you really want to go out to eat, so the group decides to go. On the way back home, the roads are very, very icy like the forecast had previously shown, and you end up sliding into the ditch and wreck the car. This shows illusion of invulnerability because the friend group was confident that they would make it back from the restaurant because they had driven in bad weather before, and they ignore the obvious problems of icy roads. According to the article, 8 Symptoms of Groupthink by the Systems of Thinking Alliance, the illusion of invulnerability is shared by most or all of the group members, which is shown in this scenario. It also shows that the members will feel protective by the collective strength of the group. As seen in this scenario, the group felt protected because everyone was confident that they were strong enough drivers to drive in the bad weather.
This is when people believe that they can do something dangerous because they have done it before. People will overestimate or be optimistic because they have done something once and they think they can do it again. The illusion of invulnerability happens when the group convince themselves that nothing can go wrong, leading them to take unnecessary risks, ignoring warning signs, or underestimate potential problems. The most effective way to prevent the illusion of invulnerability is to build a decision-making process that requires examining risks instead of moving past the fact because of excitement or overconfidence. Think about the outcomes of what could happen. Encouraging open communication is also important. When you get the voices of other people, new ideas can pop up. Also, it gives a chance for other people to point out things that can be dangerous. A lot of people are afraid to speak up because they don't want to ruin the vibes or be a party pooper.
The next symptom that we will be talking about is excessive stereotyping, which is when members construct negative stereotypes of anyone who disagrees with them. The article Stereotyping About Groups Strategies by Future Learn says that this symptom is heavily based on the group's decisions being assumptions, which you'll see in this next example. An example of excessive stereotyping is that a girl wants to join in a game of basketball that a group of boys are playing. The group of boys playing don't want her to join and all agree that she shouldn't be allowed to play. They begin excessively stereotyping her by saying, girls are too weak to play with us, you'll be too slow to play because of your girl, and girls aren't as good at basketball as boys. The girl tries to speak up and argue that she is in fact good at basketball, but the boys continue to throw the stereotype that she is a girl and is being over-emotional so she still can't play. This shows excessive stereotyping because the group members are constructing negative stereotypes upon the girl who disagrees with them, as she thinks that she should be able to play, but they don't.
Stereotyping. When in groups, there are many people who have their own beliefs. One of the main groupthink problems is stereotyping. When a bunch of people have their own beliefs, it is common for people to stereotype others if they don't believe in the same thing as other people do, or if they've had bad past experiences with other people. The first way to avoid stereotyping is by having a well-promoted diversity and inclusion in the group discussion. When you just focus on what people have to say and not who's saying it, this will help eliminate stereotyping. Also, it is good to have many different beliefs because then there can be many different opinions that people wouldn't have thought about on their own. Another way to eliminate stereotyping is by rotating the roles of groups. When everyone has a chance to lead, take notes, or present ideas, it breaks down the status-based assumptions on who the expert or the leader is. This will allow everyone to use their creativity, intelligence, and leadership skills.
The next symptom we'll be talking about is self-censorship. And the definition of self-censorship is members don't speak up if they have dissenting viewpoints. So a fact about groupthink from the article 8 Symptoms of Groupthink is that groupthink is more likely to occur if the group has a strong or dictatorial leader. And this shows up in self-censorship because reasons that members may not speak up is because there's a dictatorial leader. An example of this would be having a meeting at your work and you're trying to come up with a new idea to advertise a new product. One coworker decides that the best way to do this is by hanging up posters outside throughout the town. Everyone goes along with the idea because the coworker has been working at the workplace for a long period of time and they have a higher role. But you think that advertising the product online will be more beneficial and can reach a bigger audience outside of the town. You choose not to speak up because you don't think that your voice has as much influence. This shows self-censorship because you didn't think that your voice would have as much influence even though you had a dissenting viewpoint. The article 8 Symptoms of Groupthink had a quote that says, "Desire of acceptance," which really speaks to a specific example because the coworker didn't speak up when no one else was, and she had the desire to be accepted by all of her coworkers and didn't want to upset anyone.
Self-censorship and must never happen. This is because it can leave out good ideas. A lot of the time, people are scared to voice their opinions in front of a group. This can be because they're scared of being judged, or they might lack confidence, or even be scared to challenge someone else of higher power. When people don't voice their opinion, the group can lose out on extra insight. Some ways the group can avoid this is by making everyone feel respected, heard, and valued. This will cause people to be less scared because no one will openly judge them. Another way to avoid self-censorship is by letting people know that some ideas need to be disagreed with and challenged. The main point is that the leaders of the group get the leaders of the group to believe that the space will not lead to judgment and embarrassment. People will most likely express themselves honestly. Another way to stop self-censorship is for the leaders of the group to not state what they think too early. When people of higher authority announce how they think something should be done, people won't want to challenge them and they will just agree right away. Overall, self-censorship is a hard groupthink scenario to avoid, but it can be possible when the culture of the group is right and also when the leaders let everyone talk before them.
So the last symptom that Jacob and I will be talking about is the illusion of unanimity. And the definition is members falsely perceive that everyone agrees with the group's decision because they don't hear anyone offering any counterarguments. An example of this would be in a meeting at work, your coworkers are trying to come up with ideas for a new lounge room for the staff. At the previous meeting for the lounge room, it was discussed to have couches and reclining chairs. One coworker at this new meeting has a very strong opinion that they should save a lot of money by only putting chairs and tables in the room, with no couches or reclining chairs. While you disagree, you don't speak up because this person has such a strong opinion on the topic. Since no one spoke up that they disagreed, the coworker falsely perceived that everyone agreed and didn't want the couches and reclining chairs as well. The 8 Symptoms of Groupthink article says that false assumption that silence implies consent. And this can be seen in this scenario because the coworker falsely perceived that silence implied consent and thought that everyone agreed with the idea, but they really didn't.
The illusion of unanimity is similar to self-censorship because it is when people don't express their counterargument, so everyone falsely agrees. Avoiding the illusion of unanimity requires deliberate effort from both the leaders and team members to make sure that the silence or lack of objection is not mistaken for agreement. Many groups think that if no one speaks up, everyone agrees. This might not always be the case, though. The illusion can cause uncertainty, disagreement, or doubt that could have improved the final decision. One way the illusion can be handled is to make the role of someone to be the devil's advocate, and this would always question ideas. This is so no one is scared to speak up. Also, it'll stop people from stating ideas with the idea of them getting judged or made fun of. Lastly, the devil's advocate can make people think a little more about whether their ideas will work or not. Another way to stop the illusion of unanimity is by making things anonymous, so no one knows who had the idea. Once again, this will stop the group from being judged, judging people on their ideas. Just like self-censorship, the illusion of unanimity can be avoided by having a safe culture. But a way to make sure you don't come across the illusion of unanimity is having a role for someone to play devil's advocate and making a way for ideas to be anonymous.
I'm Lucy, and one of the symptoms I'm going to talk about is the collective rationalization. The definition is members explain away any ideas that are contrary to the group's position, and they convince themselves that their perspective is correct. The example I thought of was a group of friends is planning to study for a big test that they have the next day, and someone in the group says that they don't think or they don't know, and that this test is worth a lot of points. What if they fail and they don't really want to skip their studying? And the rest of the members say things like, Well, we learned a majority of it in class, or we've never failed before, so why would we now? And Mr. or Mrs. So and so always have easy tests, so I think we'll be fine. And they basically try and justify themselves and think that skipping is the right option rather than considering the lasting effects. And they also, according to Groupthink by Irving Janis, she says that collective rationalization is when members discount warnings and do not reconsider their assumptions. And in this scenario, they're really just talking themselves out of studying for their tests that they have, and they're not thinking twice about it.
Hi, my name's Will, and the solution for this, to prevent a group from falling into collective rationalization, you need people who are comfortable with being honest. Oftentimes, most groups get stuck because everyone is scared to step up and clarify if everything is making sense. Having someone in the group who regularly questions things and is helpful, it is helpful because it keeps the whole group grounded and under control. Getting an outside opinion also benefits this a lot. When you're all in the same group thinking with the same ideas, it is incredibly easy to ignore obvious red flags that are happening. But someone who isn't involved usually with the group has a different eye and a different perspective, and they can see those issues and spot them down right away.
Next is the illusion of morality. The definition is members believe the decisions that they're making are morally correct and they ignore any arguments that are contrary to that. The example I thought of was there's a group of friends who are planning to go and get food late at night, and one of the friends doesn't have their license. And one of them is very smart and is thinking logically and says, this could get us into a lot of trouble and I don't think it's worth it. And then all the other people in the group are saying things like, well, she's almost 16, it doesn't really matter, and nothing bad is going to happen. We're all good drivers. And they convince themselves that what they're doing is right because they're trying to help their friend and give her more practice. And according to why group thinking is dangerous, this article states that group members think their decisions are morally correct and they don't think about the ethical consequences. In this case, this group isn't really thinking about the consequences of getting pulled over or in trouble with authorities or anything like that, and they think that they're just trying to help their friend out.
And the solution to avoid the illusion of morality, the group needs to stop assuming that they are automatically in the right. It's very easy to sit in a room and hype your group up until everyone believes that what they're doing is moral, even if it might not be. So this helps to slow down and ask ourselves if we're actually doing the right thing or if we're just telling ourselves that. This also helps us to think about people who are outside of the group. A lot of bad choices happen because nobody thinks about the long-term effects that affect people around them. Getting someone to take a look in from the outside perspective can help because they usually point out ideas and topics that the group had missed before.
Pressure for conformity is when members feel pressure to conform to the group's decision and are branded as disloyal if they do not. So this is essentially just peer pressure. So I thought of a friend group wanting to go to a party on a Friday night, and one of the members of the group is very uncomfortable with the crowd and she just doesn't want to go. And everyone else in the group tells her how much of a fun hater she is and how she's gonna ruin the night and she's ruining the mood. And she thinks that she's being uncool and being dramatic by saying no and sticking up for herself. And she ends up going with the group because the subtle pressure that was used by the other group members pressures her into coming to the party. And then, according to the psychology of groupthink and the desperate, dangerous desire for social acceptance, they say that in groupthink situations, pressures to conform become overwhelming, which in this scenario, I think all of the opinions from the other people in the group really got to this girl, and it just like makes you rethink your decision, and they let the pressure get to them.
So, the solution to avoid pressure for conformity, the group needs to make sure that people don't feel bad for having their own opinion. Oftentimes, people only argue because they don't want to be the one who disagrees. It helps when the leader of the group can step in and let people know that if they disagree with something, then it needs to be stated and it'll be okay. When hearing that out loud, it can make people relax and feel more comfortable within their group. This also matters way more than people actually realize because it can change the way that the group functions and interacts after that thing is stated. If the group actually listens to their peers and treats it properly, it can create an area where everyone can speak their peace of mind without others making fun or disagreeing with their ideas.
Okay, and the last symptom of groupthink is mind guards, and it is when members actively guard the group from hearing about arguments or evidence against the group's position that might cause doubt or disagreement. I thought of a group of friends going to a concert, but they don't have tickets, so they're essentially trying to sneak in. And one girl notices that the security guard outside of the venue is really cracking down on tickets and is being stricter than normal. And they tell the mind guard of the group, and they just shake it off and tell her to stop ruining the mood and everything's going to be fine. And the mind guard like has just blocked the group from rethinking their risky decision because had the girl told everybody else in the group that they might get in trouble or that the security guard is being stricter than usual, they might have rethought their decision. And the mind guard is essentially protecting the group from their doubts. And according to Groupthink, written by Irving Janis, she says that self-appointed mind guards protect the group and the leader from information that is problematic or contradictory. So in this scenario, it's really just blocking the rest of the group from hearing something that might make them rethink their decision.
And this can be prevented by the group ensuring that nobody is attempting to manage what everyone else is hearing. People do this without thinking. They sometimes hide bad news or leave out certain details because they don't want the group to freak out. But oftentimes it just makes the whole situation worse. It works much better when the group leader asks for the speaker to spill the whole story, even if the things that they might not want to hear. So it can take the pressure off of the people who tend to keep certain details to themselves.
Okay, well, that was great, everybody. And in closing, as we end this presentation, I kind of just want to leave you with a key idea, understanding that groupthink isn't just an academic exercise. It's a practical skill that can protect our groups, our decisions, even our relationships. Groupthink, a term first introduced, as stated earlier by Alicia in 1970 by Irvin Janis, describes what happens when a group becomes so unified, so eager to avoid conflict, that it stops thinking critically. Instead of seeking the best decision, group members seek the most comfortable one. Today, we've explored several of Janis's 8 symptoms of groupthink. These symptoms are warning signs or signals that a group has gone off track. These symptoms, excuse me, I'm sorry. One of the earliest and most dangerous is the illusion of invulnerability, where the group becomes overly confident, it ignores clear risks. According to the textbook, group members are nearly 200% more likely to voice disagreement when groupthink is not occurring. That means the moment we stop hearing opposition, we should become more, not less concerned. We saw how this played out in real life. Think of the group of friends who chose to drive to get dinner despite the dangerous weather forecast. Because they had done it before, the group overestimated their collective ability and ended up in a ditch. This is exactly how the illusion of vulnerability works. The group's confidence replaces the caution that should be guiding their decisions. Another symptom we examined is stereotyping, those who disagree. When a group holds a strong opinion, anyone who challenges it can quickly become the outsider. Instead of evaluating her skills, they relied on harmful stereotypes like girls are too weak or too slow. This is how groupthink pushes people to judge who is speaking rather than what's being said. But we also discussed solutions, promoting diversity, inclusion, rotating group roles, and focusing on the value of ideas rather than the identity of the speaker can reduce stereotyping. When everyone has the chance to lead, contribute, to be heard, the group becomes more open minded and less likely to fall into a groupthink trap. We also explored self censorship, another core symptom. Many people stay silent because the fear of judgment or because someone else in the group holds more power than they do. In the workplace scenario, we discussed the employee with a better idea stayed quiet simply to avoid tension, and the group lost out on more effective advertising strategy. Silence may feel safe, but it deprives the group of potentially game changing insight. And the silence leads to another major symptom, the illusion of unanimity. When no one objects, leaders often assume everyone agrees, but silence is not consent, as stated earlier. Often, it really means discomfort, hesitation, or a lack of confidence. Without intentional strategies like approaching devil's advocate, as we heard earlier, or collecting anonymous input, we also heard earlier, groups may end up with decisions that only seem unanimous, but they're not. So, why does this all matter? Well, it matters because groupthink doesn't just affect high level government decisions or corporate boardrooms, it affects families, classrooms, workplaces, group friends, everyday interactions, really. When we ignore dissenting voices, rely on stereotypes, and assume agreement, we miss opportunities for smarter decisions, deeper understanding, and more meaningful collaboration. Now, the good news is that groupthink is preventable. By creating environments where everyone is respected, heard, and valued, we encourage real dialogue. When leaders wait before stating their opinions, they give others room to think freely. And when groups intentionally make space for disagreement, they become more innovative and inclusive and ultimately more effective. So, as I leave this here today, just remember this: strong groups, they don't avoid disagreement, they welcome it. Strong groups don't silence minority opinions, they seek them out. And strong groups don't settle for easy decisions, they work towards the right ones. If we can commit to encouraging honest voices, questioning assumptions, and embracing different perspectives, then we can build groups that don't fall into groupthink, but they rise above it. Thank you.